Now for our roundtable with Mariana Mancuso, Republican political strategist, author of PoliticalHype.com, a blog aimed at conservative millennials. Thank you for now being a familiar face here, Mariana. And News Channel 5's longtime familiar face, political analyst Brian Crowley, author of CrowleyPoliticalReport.com, and for many years one of the state's top political reporters with the Palm Beach Post. Speaking of politics, Monday, the big announcement from Governor Scott, and all of us expect the big announcement that's going to be made on Facebook Monday morning will be his announcement that he's running for the United States Senate, pitting him against incumbent Bill Nelson. Your take?
Well, we know that Rick Scott is going to have a difficult election against Senator Bill Nelson, who has all been but invisible the entire time he's been a senator from Florida. But with Rick Scott, he's going to have to really focus on energizing not just the voters across the state, but his base as well. And we've noticed that his past two elections, he's won by razor-thin margins. And this is going to be a difficult one for him because his strategy normally is to go after the White House. And when we think about this current White House, it's kind of difficult when they're sitting on the same side of the aisle. So it will be interesting to see what this looks like for Rick Scott. We
in the media are always criticized about making it a horse race, so let's dive into how do you think the issues shape up, the pivotal issues between Scott that he'll focus on and Nelson that will help decide the contours of this race?
Well, the thing about, with our new White House, or relatively new now, the issues can change rapidly daily, and so the things that people wind up focusing, you're going to be a candidate almost no matter what you run for, where the president's going to say something in the morning and you're going to be asked about it in the afternoon, and that's going to have a lot of impact on how these races pan out. And so the campaigns really want to hang on to their plan and what they're going to say and what they're going to do, and you have this wild card out there that can disrupt all that on a moment's notice. So it's and Rick Scott has tied himself very, very closely to Donald Trump. So it's not like he's going to be able to disengage easily from Donald Trump. But I think one of the big issues is, for a Senate race is going to be control of Congress, whether and what that means in the future with dealing with President Trump.
Mariana, same question. Not only the national aspect of that, which can and very well will be pivotal, but also the Florida issues. The governor recently led the effort for the school and gun safety bill. I can't believe he's not going to have one after another talking about the work he did during Irma, crisscrossing the state. As you coalesce the issues that he and Bill Nelson will tangle over in Florida, how do you see it?
Well, they're going to definitely tangle over the gun control bill that he recently passed, as well as his handling of the disaster relief that we saw after Irma, the nursing home occupants that died, as well as the bridge that recently collapsed at FAU. And we know that that's kind of a problem. FIU, excuse me. We understand that's a little problematic because he was alerted of a structural issue, but unfortunately that went to voicemail and he never took the call. And he's going to get hit on those issues.
Well, he's going to argue FDOT never took the call, not Rick Scott. Well, but it's going to be an issue of readiness for him.
Correct.
And for Bill Nelson, where does he gain traction? I mean, he seems like he's been in Florida politics forever, but this, I would argue, may well be his toughest race yet. Is that your sense of it?
His toughest race as a U.S. Well, his toughest as U.S. Senator. He lost a race for governor once. Mariana's right. Bill Nelson is not well known among Florida voters. He's been a very quiet senator, and as many of them are. You would be hard-pressed to point to the Nelson legislation that's this big national thing that has his fingerprints all over it. The upside to that is it gives him a chance to reintroduce himself to voters. The downside is that it gives Rick Scott plenty of time to create an identity for Rick Scott.
Now the possibility of 3 women running against Republican Congressman Brian Mast, who represents Martin, St. Lucie, parts of Palm Beach County, could see that. Similar to what we're seeing nationally with a record number of women running for Congress. Talk about that.
Well, we know that as we see this record number of women stepping up to run, they have realized that since the 1920s, after winning the right to vote, and now in 2018, they've realized that their place is in the House and the Senate possibly, which is great. But also, too, what we see is that this is a malaise that the America electorate has suffered, and women have stepped up and said, we watched Hillary Clinton lose. We're now watching men in Congress legislate our uterus. It is time for us to do something and really make an impact. And so they're standing up and they're ready to take over and show Congress how do we get things done.
Me Too movement's driving a good bit of that.
Yes, but I don't think it's Me Too anymore.
Well.
It's not about the Me Too movement anymore.
Broader than that.
It is. It's now become why not me.
A new poll out has some interesting details about protesters, by the way. Brian, I want you to weigh in on this, then you, Mariana. The Washington Post Kaiser Family Foundation poll says 1 in 5 Americans have been in protest or political rallies since 2016. 44% are 50 or older. They live mainly in the suburbs. More are Democrats than Republicans. Nearly a third approve of President Trump. 70% disapprove of the president. Pull from that poll, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if the 70% is representing the protesters who disapprove of Donald Trump, then okay, I'm not surprised. I mean, of course, protesters by and large are going to, disapprove whoever's in power. Because there's other polls that came out last week that showed that Donald Trump's approval rating has actually gone up.
40
plus. Gone up a notch. So,
this is strictly about the protest group, a subset.
Yeah, the thing about protest groups is it's sort of like Occupy Wall Street. I said to a couple of people when Occupy Wall Street was really rolling, I said, Occupy Wall Street is doomed to fail. And they thought I had two heads. And I said, well, name me the leaders of Occupy Wall Street. Well, we don't need leaders. Well, every movement needs a leader, and I think that some of these protests, it's going to be interesting to see how, for example, the Parkland shootings, some of the young students that are there have come across the units, but will they be leading in the long term on these things? And that's a big thing when any of these protest movements, who's leading it?
Mariana, final thoughts as you see the contours of polls like this and take the temperature of the people you talk to out there, those who are protesting and those who are not, maybe sitting on the sidelines waiting for November. Your take?
I see this as a rebirth of liberal activism, much like we saw in '64 that was born out of the Goldwater campaign. However, what's important to keep in mind is it took them 16 years before those people were able to influence policy. And again, this is going to be a long game. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so they're going to have to continue this momentum. And we know activism breeds more activism. And the best that they can hope for is that it can turn into votes. And there will be a point in the next few cycles where somebody asks a Democratic legislator, why did you get involved? And he'll say, Trump got elected.
Interesting. For both, we appreciate it. We'll be back with your closing thoughts in just a moment.